We're back for another PMP Industry Insider Podcast. I'm Brett, the editor of the show, and a new series is here to help you get caught up, or if you're new, welcome inside. Insiders Rewind, which is where you are now, will look back at the month prior and pick a short section that made an impact in that particular episode from last month. The PMP Industry Insider Podcast takes a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industry, and we take you to the front lines of what is driving those changes. Each week, the show presented by our friends at Comarch Marketing Services for the pest and lawn industry. You can visit comarch.com for more information there. And if you want industry-specific insurance, PestSure can help out. They provide insurance products tailor-made to the pest and lawn industry. They're online at pestsure.com. Also, Voice for Pest. They are the industry leader in designing and implementing unparalleled voice solutions for PCOs of any size across the country. You can visit voiceforpest.com/podcast. And just as a reminder, if you're interested in peer groups, you can join one. Information available at pmpindustryinsider.com/peer groups. They're facilitated by David Billingsley. If you want a bit of a preview on how they work, you can listen to episode 136. So every Thursday, a new PMP Industry Insider podcast drops, and January was busy. 5 Thursdays, quite a bit to get to today. And our first stop is at episode 207. It dropped back on January 2nd. It featured Alex Booth. He's the digital marketing consultant for Comarch by WorkWave. And the episode discussed 2025 marketing trend shifts. And what do you think the big trend is for the new year? You got it. It's AI.
What do you see how AI could transform the way that we approach marketing as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, so back to, again, I'm not the AI guy, so I'm not the guy who's thinking that AI is going to change the world like by January, right? So with that being said, I don't think that AI is going to fully replace people yet. But to your point, like you just said, I think it's going to make people in some ways more efficient and more effective with the time that they have because they're able to do more with less, right? So one of the big things that I think it's changing is just controlling cost in general via software. So not only do you have chatbots, you have AI that can be integrated into your actual servicing software. You have buy onlines. I mean, it's changing everything from not only an employee perspective, but more so from a customer facing perspective. But the big thing again, and I'll roll on Derek's topic here, you eventually are going to need to be everywhere because of how much AI search is going to change what that landscape looks like. Now, back to the earlier point, as far as we know, and we could look back on this in a year or 2 years and be very wrong, Google is not going anywhere, right? From a search result standpoint, it's not going anywhere. So it's not that you need to change the way that you're doing SEO entirely. It's more so that you need to start building a well-known brand. And we'll talk about the details of that, but you need to start building a brand so that AI actually trusts you. Now,
isn't that the premise of all internet search and SEO, way back? You've got to write the articles, you can't word stuff, you've got to do, all of these different things. It seems like it's just a smarter way to do it. How do you, if I've got a budget and I'm going to say, okay, I want to put my money into marketing. It used to be, okay, I hire an agency and they charge me a management fee, and then we go out and we buy a bunch of AdWords. What does that model look like? I have a bunch of money next year to spend on marketing. What are you spending it on, and what does it look like?
Yeah, look, I don't think we're going to change the basics yet. And I say yet because it could be coming shortly. But I think still from an SEO standpoint, right, I think doing the basics aggressively well, it's going to be more and more important. So just like you said, Dan, like going back to, writing the articles and having not keyword stuffing, you can't take shortcuts now, because now what AI is looking at is Google's algorithm, but multiplied by 10. So you have to have the expertise, you have to have the trustworthiness, you have to have the authority.
Again, that was episode 207 from January 2nd, featuring Alex Booth. The conversation extended even further than that into AI search and marketing budgets for this year and so much more. You can listen to that at pmpindustryinsider.com. Don't forget, you can also watch episodes on YouTube. While you're there, be sure to give us a like and a follow. Moving on to episode 208, Dan and Donnie riding solo on this one. They were recapping 2024 and forecasting 2025. The episode dropped on January 9th, and one of my favorite points was made by Donnie. He was talking about owners who came up through working in the field, and now they're managing the office, which could use some work. So how can AI help in the office? Let's check it out.
Most owners came up through the field side. And if you look at most companies, they're tight. I mean, they're tight on the service side. You know, the routes are dialed in, the products are dialed in, the procedures are dialed in, and their office is a disaster. People are sitting around, you know, like there's just really inefficient. They don't manage the office nowhere near as tight as they do the service side. And it's just a function of because that's what they know. I think with AI and kind of what we're seeing is that it's going to allow us to be much more, it's going to give us a lot more visibility that you can't or have never had the ability to have in the past. And for me, I'm not looking to like hammer people. I don't think anyone, I mean, if you got people on your staff that you feel like you've got to yell at or, you know, coerce into things, well, you probably got the wrong staff. But you know, for me, I love giving our staff data, right? I love giving them tools that can help them get better at their job. And when they, you know, when you got someone listening and evaluating every single call, obviously you can't replicate that with a person, but with AI you can. That has been very, it's been a game changer for Triangle in terms of our close rate. And I mean, I'm not just talking that this is a little cool toy that we look at. I'm talking about real percentages. You know, our close rate has gone into anywhere from 5 to 10% average, you know, per rep. And so,
and it's not just on the sales side. Like when, you know, you go to business school, there's functional areas of business. There's finance, accounting, marketing, sales, management. And when I first started with ChatGPT, I was, you know, in my mind, it was a cool way to do content. You know, it's just so far beyond that. You can affect every single one of those functional areas, IT,
right.
Anything. You know, it's pretty neat stuff. And if you're not involved with it, we had Andrew Latter on a podcast last couple months ago, and he's like an AI guy, and you should check on our website for those show notes. There's just so much, and I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I really do.
Episode 208 from January 9th, and at the end there, Dan was talking about Andrew Lauder. He's the founder of Lauder Co., and he was featured on episode 166 from February 29th of last year, so check that out. Moving on now to episode 209, just Dan and Donnie again, this one from January 16th. It's called The Long Game, Mastering Exit Planning for Your Business. They discuss why it's extremely important to have an exit plan. Donnie's biggest fear as a business owner is also packed in here, and a very important piece, recurring versus one-time revenue, and so much more in this. An important piece, of course, is focusing on not getting trapped by the big check when you're selling, right? So don't forget to see who you're selling to. Let's dive in.
I want to be careful how I say this.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Don't piss anyone off. I have all these relationships.
I will just say this. You really need to think through the big picture. I mean, no matter what, if you've built your business right, you're gonna have more money you could spend anyway. What are the people who helped you build it? What does that look like? And really bringing that into your cross check, because I don't know. I've seen people get short-sighted on that and completely, and I'm not going to curse on this podcast, but completely screw their team. And do you really want to do that? And so when you have the timeline to think about that, that absolutely should be a major consideration. Listen, I have a lot of gratitude for my team, and the last thing I would do is turn them over to a bunch of you-know-what that don't really know a whole lot, but they gave me a big check, and now I'm gone, and who cares, right? It just, those are things you need to think about because they're real, right? I mean, you're still going to see these people at the grocery store. You're still going to, you know, I mean, they're still going to be a part of your life, and so I don't know. Just things to think about. There's more to it than just the price. And I mean, we're not going to sit here and have a kumbaya moment, but it is absolutely, like, I've seen it happen several times where someone goes for the short-sighted, they get the big check, they get the big promise. The buyer, I'm not going to say who, the buyer doesn't, they put in all these little, what I consider to be snake out clauses. And so in the end, no one really gets anything happening, and you end up decimating the team, and everything that you built, you just get to sit back and watch it just get torn apart. And that's kind of, I mean, you may not care, you get your big check, who cares? But I don't know. I think I know most business owners, and if there's one thing I know about a lot of business owners is that they're almost loyal to a fault, and they're really good people.
Great episode from mid-January. It was episode 209. They went on to talk about the challenges of selling the business within the family, how it can go well, how it can't go well, get ugly. Again, episode 209 there. And now we're moving into episode 210. It was part one of a two-parter that expands on that family business chat. The theme here is passing the torch. And in part one, Charlie, Chaz, and Carly Church were featured. And a section with Chaz and Carly talks about some of the tech changes. I mean, this business is 103 years old. They're also talking about the age gap between owners in that business.
We use a lot of ChatGPT for making sure that we send good things back out to our customers, make higher decisions, our processes that we're improving on. We're using all of our cell phones. I talked to my dad and some of our technicians, and they used to have to use pagers, and they would have to go out and find phone booths to call people.
Are you serious?
I am so serious. And so they'd have to find the closest pager. When I was coming up as a technician, I know now how to use a map. So we used to have a map book, and the technician would make me figure out where the stop was based off of the map. So you'd go to the back of the book, you would find A5 on page 32, and you'd go there and you'd be like, okay, this is how we get to our next stop. So, I mean, yes, these things we take for granted as like their everyday things. We are now implementing them into the business so that we can make ourselves more efficient. That's what everybody wants to do. You want to be more saturated and you want to be more efficient. Without one without the other, it's still not going to be as beneficial to your business. So, but I'll pass it over to Carly. I'm sure she's got plenty of other ideas.
Well, I just think that it's important to point out that there is quite a gap in age between Chaz and I and our dad. I would say that we're probably missing a generation. Our dad is a young 70, and Chaz and I are just about 30 and under. So there's like that missing 45, maybe 50-year-old in there. So trying to bridge this gap, I feel like was a little bit more difficult. And something our dad always said to, all of us and our employees was, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not going to do myself. So him having these challenges with technology, it made it harder for him to implement and get his people to get behind him because he was having a difficult time himself. But Chaz and I were right there with them. We're helping them learn these new technologies, helping them learn how to use our CRM and the voice for pests that we use. I mean, anything, we are right there with them, and we're going to give them the resources that they need in order to be able to be successful moving forward. Because, I mean, when we got here in 2019, we were just now going paperless.
That was episode 210, and as mentioned, part one of a two-part series about passing the torch. So on to part two, this one with Howard and Connor Bright of Anti-Pesto. This section here explains what it's like working with family members, and it's Connor speaking. Just a short snip, packed with a lot of great and valuable insights that may help you if you're in the family business as well.
Honestly, the key to what we've kind of figured out with this is clear communication and clear boundaries, and understanding that my mom and dad are my mom and dad first, and then business partner / boss second, and understanding that and having that clearly defined has really been a game changer for us, and understanding that we are very different. In a lot of ways, but at our core, we have the same values, and that's what matters the most. My dad is the visionary. He's big ideas. He loves marketing and sales. I'm more about getting it done, and I do have a creative side, but he definitely has the big ideas. So we work really well together in that aspect. And then obviously my mom is kind of the glue in the finance world of making sure that these ideas we come up with and figure out how to do that we can actually
pay for them.
Yes.
These harebrained ideas.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's also recognizing what each other's strengths and weaknesses are in this, and being open and honest with them as well, and recognizing that we definitely work way better together as a team than we do individually.
That was part 2 of Passing the Torch to wrap up the month of January and bring a close to Insider's Rewind. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Brett, the editor of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast. All of the resources that you need are available online, pmpindustryinsider.com. That'll include show notes, information on peer groups, and so much more. If you want to learn anything about the podcast, you can find it there. Again, pmpindustryinsider.com. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.